Welcome to your midday NTD News. I'm Emily Ho. President Donald Trump took his re-election campaign to a rally in New Hampshire last night, where his pitch emphasized the future of the currently booming economy.
The markets have gone through the roof since November 9th. That's the day after I won the election.
Trump described how U.S. financial markets have skyrocketed since his election, saying the markets would likely have crashed otherwise. He also warned that it could still happen in 2020 if he isn't re-elected.
And this room is a love fest, I know that. But you have no choice but to vote for me because your 401ks, down the tubes, everything's going to be down the tubes. So whether you love me or hate me, you got to vote for me.
Trump reminded New Hampshire voters how successful the state is now and warned against rocking the boat by voting for Senator Elizabeth Warren.
You have the best unemployment. You have the most successful state in the history of your state and in the history of our country. And then you're going to vote for somebody else? Oh, great.
Trump also sought to reassure voters about the trade war with China. He said China wants to deal, but the U.S. isn't ready yet since the Treasury is collecting billions of dollars in tariffs, and China's economy is weakening.
China's devaluing their currency. They're pouring out money. The prices haven't gone up, so that means we're taking in billions of dollars. We're not paying for it. And ultimately, their devaluations are going to hurt them very badly. They want to make a deal, and they should want to.
Trump says he plans to impose 10% duties on an additional $300 billion of Chinese imports, extending penalties to almost everything the U.S. buys from China. But on Wednesday, he postponed penalties on about 60% of those goods until December 15. In 2016 presidential elections, Trump narrowly lost the state of New Hampshire by less than 3,000 votes to Hillary Clinton. Trump said the rally was an official launch of his campaign to win New Hampshire in 2020.
Israel deciding today to allow U.S. Congresswoman Richest Tlaib to visit family in the West Bank on humanitarian grounds. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more.
The decision to allow Democrat Congresswoman Richest Tlaib entry into Israel comes one day after she and fellow Congresswoman Ilhan Omar were barred from making an official visit to the country. Tlaib of Michigan and Omar of Minnesota are both harsh critics of Israeli policy toward the Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday he would not allow them to make a planned trip to Israel since he said it was clear they are planning a journey with the sole target of strengthening the boycott movement and negating the legitimacy of Israel. However, Netanyahu said that if Tlaib submitted a request to visit family on humanitarian grounds, Israel would consider it as long as she promised not to promote a boycott against Israel. Tlaib and Omar both support the pro-Palestinian boycott, divestment, sanctions, or BDS movement that's been condemned by the United States. And under Israeli law, BDS backers can be denied entry. Tlaib sent a letter to Israel's Interior Ministry on Thursday requesting permission to visit relatives, including her grandmother, who is in her 90s, saying it could be her last opportunity to see her. I will respect any restrictions and will not promote boycotts against Israel during my visit, wrote Tlaib. Yesterday, President Trump commented on the visit, saying he doesn't know why Israel would let in the pair of progressive congresswomen.
They are very anti-Jewish and they're very anti-Israel. I think it's disgraceful, the things they've said.
The two congresswomen were among 17 who opposed the bill condemning BDS versus the 398 who approved it. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
In New York this morning, two suspicious packages prompted the evacuation of one of the city's busiest transit hubs during rush hour. The discovery of what appeared to be two pressure cookers caused authorities to clear passengers from Fulton Street Station in Lower Manhattan, where there was a heavy police presence and emergency vehicles on the scene. An hour later, the police gave an all-clear, saying the packages were deemed safe. Police posted two photographs of the cookers on social media and said they had been cleared by the bomb squad. In a surprise move, the boss of Cathay Pacific Airways has quit. His sudden departure comes with the airline under intense pressure to suspend staff involved in the pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong.
Good afternoon, everyone.
An airline that's become embroiled in a political clash between pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong and authorities in Beijing. Cathay Pacific's boss, Rupert Hogg, quit today in a surprise announcement. It comes after Beijing ordered the airline to suspend staff that have taken part in the protests. They've named a new boss as Augustus Tang. Paul Liu, Chief Customer and Commercial Officer, also quit and was replaced by Ronald Lam. Last week, Cathay Pacific said it wouldn't stop staff taking part in Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests. But Beijing ordered the airline to ban staff that do. Cathay Chairman John Slosar said in a statement about the resignations, "This is regrettable as we have always made safety and security our highest priority. And we therefore think it is time to put a new management team in place who can reset confidence and lead the airline to new heights." The airline has said it was committed to the one country, two systems, a promise that the city would have democracy and semi-autonomy, including an independent judiciary, when it was handed over to China in 1997.
We certainly wouldn't dream of telling them what they have to think about something.
Protests by thousands of demonstrators have shut down Hong Kong International Airport several times. Hogg said the last few weeks were challenging. Jiang Weiro, NTD News.
In other Hong Kong news, the city's richest man spoke out for the first time since the crisis began in a series of newspaper ads. It comes ahead of more mass protests planned for the weekend and Beijing warning it could use force.
Stand with Hong Kong, power to the people. Protesters holding a rally at Hong Kong's Chater Garden Friday night, demanding democracy and government accountability. Earlier today in an editorial, China's Global Times said Beijing had the option to forcefully intervene in Hong Kong riots. The newspaper is a tabloid published by the Communist Party's People's Daily. White House National Security Advisor John Bolton warned China against a repeat of the Tiananmen massacre.
The Chinese have to look very carefully at the steps they take because people in America remember Tiananmen Square. It would be a big mistake to create a new memory like that in Hong Kong.
In the past 2.5 months, over 600 protesters have been arrested in Hong Kong. Hong Kong police have been accused of using excessive force since the protests began, including firing tear gas inside an enclosed subway station, shooting pepper balls at close range at crowds, and forcefully dispersing protesters. Human rights observers say Hong Kong police are escalating the use of force and should be held accountable. Meanwhile, the Civil Human Rights Front, which organized million-strong marches in June, has scheduled another huge rally for Sunday. Hong Kong's richest man, business magnate Li Ka-shing, made his first comments on the protest. He bought the full front pages of major newspapers Friday morning, urging people to love China, love Hong Kong, and love yourself. In one ad, he said, "The best cause can lead to the worst outcome." In another, he quoted an ancient poem conveying the message to stop killing your own children. Some readers decoded the advertisement as being an acrostic poem reading, "The cause and outcomes are because of the state," and "Allow Hong Kong to rule itself." Reporting by Eleanor Tsao, NTD News.
As Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests lurch on with no end in sight, two of the city's lawmakers are in New York to appeal to Americans' shared respect for freedom. NTD reporter Penny Zhou spoke with them about their vision for a democratic Hong Kong.
In the briefings hosted by the Asia Society in New York, Hong Kong legislators Denise Kwok and Alvin Young discussed the Hong Kong police treatment of protesters over the past 2 months.
Been that bullets shooting at her eye and she lost her right eye.
Holding a picture of a female protester who suffered permanent damage to her eye, they say the protesters' request to withdraw the extradition bill is reasonable. The bill, if passed, would allow the courts to send anyone in Hong Kong to face trial in mainland China. The lawmakers are visiting the U.S. ahead of a Congress debate in September about the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. The act, if passed, would punish Hong Kong officials who violate human rights by freezing their U.S.-based assets and denying them entry into the country. It has received bipartisan support. The Hong Kong lawmakers say the protest is not an internal affair, as claimed by Beijing, but part of a global contest between authoritarianism and democracy.
Hong Kong has been at the forefront of facing an authoritarian state for 30 years, and if not beyond that. And over the past 20-odd years since the handover, we have experienced encroachment from Beijing and trying to undermine our values that we share with the rest of the world.
The legislators appealed to the U.S. citizens to continue to pay attention to the situations in Hong Kong.
Talk to your congressman, your senator, those who represent you to ask them to do something.
As for the possibility of Beijing sending troops to Hong Kong and turning the city into the second Tiananmen Square, the legislators say it would be a crazy idea that does not do anybody any good, since Hong Kong's status as an international finance center cannot be replaced by any of the cities in mainland China, where
there's no rule of law, there's no freedom of information, free flow of capital, and freedom of movement. This is how Hong Kong differs from Shanghai, because the world do not believe in Shanghai and do not believe in the systems in China. So
Hong Kong legislators will be meeting with their U.S. counterparts in Montana next week. Penny Zhou, NTD News, New York.
A French climber known as Spiderman climbs up a skyscraper in Hong Kong, unfurling a peace banner. Footage here shows him tying the banner to the high-rise building, which features Hong Kong and Chinese flags and two-hand shaking. He said in a statement it was an urgent appeal for peace and consultation between Hong Kong people and their government. But he's had mixed reactions online, with a Chinese dissident artist posting on Twitter, "Do you really want to shake hands with butchers and dictators?" China has become a major exporter of pharmaceutical products worldwide, and now increasing numbers of U.S. consumers rely on the communist country for their own drugs. Experts say this dependence is a national security threat.
In 5 to 10 years, we'll have virtually no manufacturing capacity left for generic drugs. And again, this is 90% of our medicines.
At a recent congressional hearing, experts warned that dependence on China for active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs, generic drugs, and biologic medicines has become a national security threat. This is mainly the result of unfair competition caused by China's predatory trade practices.
Chinese companies formed a cartel, dumped it on the global market, and they drove out all the U.S., European, and even Indian producers. This was in the early 2000s. And once they gained dominant market share, prices went back up.
The U.S. military also relies on the global market for their drug supply. This dependence on China has the Defense Health Agency concerned.
We are aware that 80% of the active pharmaceutical agreements, the APIs as noted, used by commercial sources to produce finished products come from China and other non-TAA compliant countries such as India.
Gibson Adpriest said if China restricts its supply of APIs to the United States, it would lead to a serious shortage of drugs, both for civilians and the military, and would threaten medical institutions' operations as well. In addition, there are grave issues with the quality of pharmaceuticals from China, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration faces tough challenges in sending its own people to China to inspect for quality.
When we lose control over supply, we lose control over quality. That's why we have blood pressure medicines with carcinogens in them.
To fundamentally resolve drug dependence on China, experts suggest that the U.S. government needs to conduct a whole-of-government review to identify vulnerabilities and rebuild U.S. pharmaceutical manufacturing bases. Reporting by Kitty Wang, NTD News.
And a former attorney famous for leading a major terrorism prosecution has released a book detailing a side of the Russia collusion allegations we don't often hear about. Here's NTD's Eileen Ng in Silicon Valley with the report.
Rather than drop the case, what they would do is fabricate a national security angle.
Andrew McCarthy, a former prosecutor, shared what he learned about the Trump administration and the Mueller report at the Liberty Forum in Silicon Valley on Tuesday. Now a columnist and writer, McCarthy launched his new book that same day, titled Ball of Collusion, The Plot to Rig an Election and Destroy a Presidency.
It's really a story that traces back to the Hillary Clinton emails investigation and goes through the Trump-Russia investigation. It's an effort to show that the same quality of justice clearly was not afforded to the two investigations.
He believes that there was collusion in the 2016 election, but not in the way we're often told it happened.
The real collusion was not this fable about Donald Trump and Russia. The real collusion was that the Obama administration put the law enforcement and intelligence apparatus of the United States government in the service of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
According to McCarthy, the government's counterintelligence powers were exploited. They're only supposed to be used for protecting our country against foreign powers.
They're not supposed to be used for any other purpose. They're certainly not supposed to be used to affect a presidential election or any kind of a political election.
From an attorney's point of view, McCarthy says an investigation should always run in a district or field office where the offense allegedly took place, not at the headquarters.
If headquarters takes on that investigative role themselves, there's no one there to correct them and force them to follow the normal rules if they stray from the normal rules.
Put simply, it was an unfortunate mistake that the Department of Justice, or DOJ, and FBI were directly involved in the investigation.
I think they thought that because of the sensitivity of the case, that it was something they thought they should take on to themselves rather than have the field offices handle it.
McCarthy says the DOJ and FBI's reputation has taken a hit, and it will take some time to rebuild it. But he says the failure lies at the managerial level of the Bureau, not with the people actually carrying out the investigation. Eileen Ng, NTD News, Cupertino, California.
The Black Bat Squadron was a covert flying unit with a dangerous mission and a high death rate. An exhibition in Washington, D.C. remembers the heroes of this Cold War cooperation between the U.S. and Taiwan.
The Black Bat Squadron is the nickname of the Taiwanese Air Force's former 34th Squadron. It was a secret reconnaissance unit carrying a telling emblem, a black bat with the stars of the Big Dipper. From 1953 to 1973, during the Cold War era, the Black Bat Squadron cooperated with the CIA, carrying out nighttime electronic detection missions by penetrating into China in low-level airspace.
This was the state's top secret at the time. Even those martyrs' family members don't know about this.
The Black Bat Squadron flew 838 missions. 15 aircraft were shot down or accidentally crashed, and 148 people died, accounting for 2/3 of the team.
What's the flight height at night? The standard minimum is 100 to 200 meters, and sometimes the lowest height is only 30 meters. Think about it. Our high-rise buildings are much higher than that. It is truly dangerous.
Xu Yinghui, the father of Maryland resident Xu Ke-er, was a member of the Black Bats. In 1958, he took a plane deep into mainland China to perform a special operation in Guangdong province. The plane was shot down by the People's Liberation Army, killing all 13 aircrew on board. He left behind 5 children. The oldest was 11, and the youngest only 2.
Because he didn't come back, we were told that he was missing, but at that time, we still had great hope, especially my mother, hoping he is still alive.
In 1992, Xu Ke-er went to mainland China with other crew member families. They located the spot of the crash and recovered the remains of all crew members, and brought their ashes back to Taiwan after cremation.
Everyone has some grief hidden in the heart. For me, the grief is I felt that I have never called Dad throughout my life.
The Black Bats exhibition material was collected by private Taiwanese organizations. The organizers hope more people will learn about this hidden history and remember the heroes who risked their lives to break through the Red Iron Curtain.
Because they were performing special tasks, these heroes must be kept unknown at that time. But as descendants of the ROC Air Force, we cannot allow these unsung heroes to remain anonymous.
The exhibition continues until September 3rd. Reporting by Kitty Wang, NTD News.
Disney breaking its own global box office record. Toy Story 4 is now its 5th movie to top $1 billion this year. Going in order, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, Aladdin, and The Lion King have also made it into the billion-dollar film club. Marvel legend Stan Lee, who died last year, is set to be inducted into the Visual Effects Society's Hall of Fame. He previously received the group's Lifetime Achievement Award. Walt Disney and Stanley Kubrick will also be inducted posthumously at a special reception in October. Disney made a record-setting achievement within 1 year, which no other studio has done before. And their good fortune is likely to continue before the end of this year with upcoming films like Frozen 2 and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Disney is also scheduled to launch a new streaming service that is expected to bring strong competition to Netflix. Emily Ho, NTD News. It's a festival times 2 in Brittany, France, where around 1,500 twins, triplets, and quadruplets of all ages gather to share stories, enjoy music, and play games, all while in identical outfits.
In 1994, the mayor of Plouqueduc in northwestern France founded the festival in honor of his twin daughters, Cécile and Aurélie.
I noticed from early on, and my wife too, that twins like meeting other twins. They have a special sort of language. They understand each other straight away.
Each year since then, twins gather to share stories of their special bond. Two twins shared about coming up with the same gift for each other without ever having discussed it. Participants came from France and even other countries. Two Armenian twins living in Germany also decided to participate after relatives and friends told them about the festival.
We were always interested, and then we had like 3 days holidays, and then we found out about this fest, and we decided to participate.
This year's festivities included a parade, meet and greet sessions, musical performances, games, and a disco, all organized by over 400 volunteers from the town's Twins and More Association.
And that's all for today's NTD Midday News. Join us again this evening. I'm Emily Ho.